The mercy candle. Your grandmother called it the mercy candle, and she said this as though the name explained everything. The way it was kept wrapped in black linen in the cedar chest, the way no one was permitted to speak of it during daylight hours, the way she herself would leave the room whenever someone mentioned death too casually. You were 7 the first time you saw it. Tall, the color of old teeth, hand-dipped in tallow that smelled faintly of iron, and something sweeter beneath, something that made your mouth water before your stomach turned. She told you the candle was a listener, not a tool, not a symbol, a listener, that certain things had been said over it across many decades, certain names spoken in grief so sincere and so desperate that the candle had absorbed those prayers the way bone absorbs cold. She said you would know when it was needed. You would feel the need the way you feel hunger, not as a thought, but as a physical insistence somewhere below the ribs. You forgot about it for 23 years. People do. Life fills itself in with noise and obligation, and the comfortable illusion that the world is made entirely of surfaces. You moved away from your grandmother's county, married, had a daughter named Rosalie, and stored the memory of that candle in whatever interior room the mind uses for things it isn't ready to discard, but cannot bring itself to examine. Then your daughter got sick. The diagnosis was the kind that rearranges all future sentences into past tense. Rosalie was 6 years old. She had your mother's dark eyes and a laugh that seemed structurally too large for her body, like something that should have belonged to a much older, much louder person. The oncologist spoke in measured syllables, the way people do when they have delivered this particular sentence too many times and have learned that rhythm can function as a kind of mercy. You heard the words. You felt them land. You drove home in silence, so complete. It had texture, like pressing your hands against a wall of dry sand. Your grandmother had been dead for 11 years. You drove to the county anyway. The farmhouse had passed to a cousin who barely used it, and she said yes over the phone without asking why you needed access, because some requests arrive already carrying their own weight of explanation. You found the cedar chest, exactly where it had always been, at the foot of the bed in the room that always smelled of dried lavender and something older, something the lavender was clearly trying to cover. The candle was inside, still wrapped, still dense, still smelling of iron, and that deeper sweetness that you now recognized as an adult, as grief, concentrated grief, the rendered fat of it. There was a card beneath the linen, your grandmother's handwriting, which looked like the letter itself was being careful. It read, "Light it only when the need is absolute. Speak the name of the one you are praying for. Do not speak any other name. Do not allow the flame to go out once lit. Do not look directly at the flame for more than 3 seconds at a time. Whatever you see in your periphery is not for you. Do not acknowledge it. Do not thank it. Close your eyes before the candle reaches its end." You told yourself these were the instructions of an old woman from a superstitious era, writing down the rituals of her grief in the only language available to her. You told yourself this, and then you brought the candle home. Because Rosalie was 6 years old, and the oncologist had used the word aggressive, and there is a level of desperation that dissolves the membrane between what you believe and what you are willing to attempt. You set the candle on the kitchen table at midnight, after your husband had taken a sleeping pill and gone to bed, after you had sat for a long time in the dark, with your hands on your knees, waiting for the feeling of foolishness to pass. It did not pass. You lit the candle anyway. The flame arrived yellow, and then settled almost immediately into something closer to white, which you had not expected. Candle flames are yellow or orange. This one was the color of winter light through frosted glass. It did not flicker. The air in the kitchen was still, but even so, flames move. They are, by nature, unstable. This one stood absolutely vertical and absolutely motionless, like something holding its breath. You watched it for 3 seconds and then looked away, as instructed, because the instructions were the only framework you had, and the human mind, when frightened, will follow any structure available. You said her name. Rosalie. The word felt different in that kitchen, at that hour, with that light. It felt like a door handle rather than a word. The name as mechanism, the name as the thing you press before something opens. The temperature in the kitchen dropped in a way that was not subtle, not the slow creep of a drafty room, a sudden subtraction, as though warmth were a garment and something had reached into the air and pulled it off. Your breath was visible. You looked at the candle. The flame was still white, still motionless, but taller now, noticeably taller. In your periphery, something sat down at the table across from you. You did not look at it. Your grandmother's instructions had been precise. Whatever you see in your periphery is not for you. You understood this now, not as a warning against distraction, but as a statement of category. That thing at the table. And there was a thing, you were certain. You could feel the specific pressure of its presence, the way you can feel someone standing close behind you in a dark room. That thing was not there for you. It was there for the candle. It was there for the name you had spoken. You gripped the edge of the table and looked at the white flame and said Rosalie again, and the flame grew again, and the thing in your periphery shifted its weight. It had no smell. That was what frightened you in a way you hadn't anticipated. Every presence has a smell. People, animals, even the memory of people in empty rooms. This thing smelled of nothing at all, which somehow registered as more invasive than any odor. Negative space, rendered physical. You were aware of its outline without being able to describe it, the way you are aware of a word you cannot quite remember. The shape of it pressing against the inside of your skull without ever resolving into something pronounceable. It was tall. It was sitting down. It was, in some capacity you had no language for, listening. You said her name 11 times. You counted. At some point you had begun to cry without realizing it, the tears cold by the time they reached your jaw, and you understood that this, the grief, the rawness, the absolute sincerity of the need, was the fuel. Your grandmother had said that the candle absorbed prayers made in sincere desperation. You were the prayer. The candle was the vessel, and the thing across the table was whatever comes when the vessel is opened. The candle burned for 3 hours. You know this because you watched the clock on the kitchen wall. Look at clock, look at flame, look at clock, look at flame, maintaining that rhythm the way you might maintain pressure on a wound. The thing in your periphery never left the table. It was joined, sometime in the 2nd hour, by something else. Smaller, crouched near the baseboard by the refrigerator, and then by the sound of something breathing in a rhythm that matched no breath you have ever heard. 4 counts in, a pause of 7, 1 count out. You did not look. You said her name. You watched the clock. The flame stayed white. When the candle reached its final inch, you remembered to close your eyes. The dark behind your eyelids was different from ordinary dark. It had movement, not the floating shapes of a closed eye adjusting to pressure, but actual movement, purposeful movement, as though something were passing very close and very quickly, through a space that should not have been large enough to contain it. You felt wind that had no business existing in your kitchen. You felt the table vibrate. You heard a sound, once, that you have since spent considerable effort trying to classify, and the closest you have come is this. Imagine the sound of a word spoken by something that has never had a mouth, that is attempting speech the way a person who has never seen water might attempt swimming. Technically correct, mechanically wrong, and awful in its earnestness. Then the warmth returned, all at once like a switch. You opened your eyes. The candle was gone. Not extinguished. Gone, completely, with no pooled wax, no wick remnant, no scorch mark on the table. The kitchen was warm and smelled of nothing. The clock said 3:47 in the morning. You sat in the chair for a long time before you were able to stand. Not because your legs refused, but because standing felt like a decision that required more certainty than you possessed. Eventually you stood. You washed your face. You went to check on Rosalie. She was sleeping on her side, her dark eyes closed, her breathing slow and even. She looked, as she always looked in sleep, impossibly peaceful. You stood in the doorway watching her chest rise and fall for a long time. You told yourself that whatever had happened, or hadn't happened, or had only seemed to happen in a kitchen at midnight when you were destroyed by fear and sleeplessness, was over. You told yourself you had done something. Mothers need to believe they have done something. 3 weeks later, the oncologist called with the results of the follow-up imaging. He used the word unprecedented. He used the phrase no evidence of. He was quiet for a moment in a way that suggested he was not accustomed to this particular silence, this particular kind of good news, and he said he would like to schedule additional scans just to be certain, just to document, because in his 30 years of practice he had not seen a presentation like this one. You said that would be fine. You thanked him. You sat down on your kitchen floor after you hung up and held your knees against your chest and shook for a very long time. Rosalie is 11 now. She is healthy. Her laugh is still too large for her body. She still has your mother's dark eyes. And sometimes, when she doesn't know you're watching, she tips her head slightly to one side and appears to be listening to something that isn't there. Some frequency just outside the range of ordinary hearing. Her expression when she does this is not frightened. It is attentive, the way a person looks when they are being addressed by something they recognize but have not yet learned to name. You have never told her about the candle. You have never told anyone. But you have started sleeping with the light on, and you have started, without fully admitting it to yourself, sleeping with one eye open, because your grandmother's instructions said, do not thank it, and something attentive, something patient, something that sat across from you at a kitchen table in the dark, while a white flame stood motionless between you, has been keeping its own accounting of what is owed. Some prayers are answered. The question your grandmother never explained, the one she took with her into whatever waits beyond a county farmhouse and a cedar chest, wrapped in black linen, is whether answered means the same thing to the listener that it means to the one who speaks the name. If this story kept you awake, you are already paying the right kind of attention. Like and subscribe to Storytime Scary Dark, and come back when the dark is ready to be generous again.